Welcome to Real BMX Racing, the podcast. Today's guest is USA BMX pro Kamren Larsen. Welcome to the show.
No, we want to take it back to the beginning, man, like of this whole journey, bro. We want to know like what inspired you to start racing BMX? How did you start? Where did you start?
Okay, yeah. So I'm originally from Bakersfield, California. My two local tracks were Metro BMX, where they still have a national to this day, and then we had another track called Bakersfield BMX. That was off one of the freeways. And yeah, basically, I got into racing from just my family. My mom and my uncle did it through my grandparents. So yeah, I think when I was just younger, Christmas time, I think I got a bike when I was around 5. And yeah, the next step for us was to go out to the track after I got off of training wheels and just kind of see how I liked it. And the story kind of goes for me that I was really scared to get in the gate and was intimidated by the gate. Didn't want to do it. But after I took my first lap, evidently I didn't want to stop.
That's awesome. I guess I was going to ask, so do you remember what your first bike was?
I'm not sure the brand, but I know it was silver. And my favorite color was blue. So I'm pretty sure I had like a blue. I think the brand was ATI number plate at the time. And yeah, I ended up being number 128, which my birthday is October 28th. So it was 10/28. So I'm not sure if it just ended up being like that or if it was like kind of like an ironic scenario. But I remember my first number and I remember what my first bike looked like, but I'm not sure the brand.
So since you started so early, man, when did you become expert?
Yeah, so started at 5, and I believe I turned expert around 7.
Wow.
And man, I struggled a lot in that transition, but yeah, I'm sure we can get into that.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's what we're here for, because sometimes the kids, they go expert and they feel like they need to come out there and win everything like they did to get there. And when they find out that it's not that easy, that's usually when they decide whether or not it's either a breaking point or they muster through and figure out, all right, so now what do I got to do to get to where I need to be,
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, of course, when I was younger, and I think around that 7-8 range, I always wanted to go to the nationals and win the big trophies because that's what they were at the time, now they're plaques. And yeah, I remember, I don't vividly remember everything to the point, but I know that from around 7 to 9, I struggled a lot in expert, not really making too many main events, maybe was state top 10, state around state 7, state 10. So locally, I think I could kind of hold my own, but I had local riders that were continuously competing with me, like getting first some nights, sometimes thirds. I remember there was a specific kid that I would always get passed by at the line. And my dad would be super, super upset with me, of course. Those drives on the way home sucked. But yeah, and then fast forwarding a little bit, at 9 years old, or at 8 years old, I went to my first grands. And that was a big eye opener. I got smoked. And obviously learned a lot and kind of saw what I guess that was my first experience of kind of how big the sport actually was, in our little world. I never raced those kids, didn't know, at that age, you're still kind of jersey reading of like, oh, who's this guy? Who's that guy? And some people I thought maybe I could beat and I got smoked by. And so, yeah, around 9 years old, I think I started winning a few nationals, maybe not those stacked races, but maybe if we went to Arizona or maybe I had a local race in Bakersfield, I did pretty well at. And yeah, I think it took to me about 2.5 years to get kind of in the mix. And then from 9 to probably 13-ish, I was consistently top 10 in the NAG. And then I kind of had a fall off and then came back up.
So in those early years between 7 and 9, was there ever a time where you just wanted to give up? You were like, I can't do this anymore, man. It's too hard. And what kept you going?
Yeah. So I think at that age, it's still fresh enough. And I was doing other sports. I was playing baseball still. I was riding dirt bikes and I was racing. So I think at that time, I probably wanted to stop because I was tired of getting yelled at by my parents. But I don't think that I was old enough yet to kind of understand really what I was doing anyways. It was kind of just like plug and play, like no matter what, on Mondays we were going to the track. Fridays we were going to the track. More of like getting me out of the house, giving me something to do. I think which like I said, we can get into. When I was about 13, I actually did quit. I quit for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And because and a lot of it had to do with some family stuff going on, which I'm cool to talk about as well. But a lot of it was that I'm really short for the normal kind of, I guess, BMX build, and I didn't grow and I wasn't strong enough, and so I was just getting my teeth kicked in week in and week out, and I kind of got over it. And I guess to answer your question, I did quit before, but then I had to build myself back and come back. So
there we go.
So how tall are you and how much do you weigh? I'm just curious because I'm a small guy also, and I'm trying to overcome racing some of the bigger guys.
Yeah, so I'm a 5'8" on a good day, and I weigh I'm just now getting to like 160 pounds. So, but growing up in this time period that we're talking about, like 13 to 15, some kids were already growing and had mustaches, and they looked like Sean Day at 15, you know. And
Right.
I was just this puny kid. I think I was like 4'10" until I was a freshman in high school. So, I mean, I was to kind of put it into perspective, I was like probably 4'10", 4'11", and these kids were already like 5'4" ish. And so, yeah, it was tough.
And what helped you like training to get faster at that size?
Yeah.
Like,
So, I mean, at that age, like we obviously didn't really know anything as a family. And I'm kind of like I guess a first generation person in my family to kind of take it to that more extreme level. Cause like I said, my mother and my uncle did race, but it was kind of just like the local, didn't really get to many nationals and stuff. So obviously I'm sure my dad was learning from other dads. We were doing a lot of sprints. We were throwing on ankle weights onto our bikes before the primal seat post was cool. I don't know if you guys know what the primal seat post is, but that was in for a little bit where there's like a super heavy seat post. And just trying to figure it out, doing everything, doing grass sprints. My dad would take me out to an actual track and field track and make me do full laps on that. Just kind of anything to at least feel like we were pushing, right? I don't think we really knew what we were doing, but at the time it was just kind of building that discipline and that kind of work ethic, I think. So
Wow.
And knowing you had to do something, right? So
right.
your mom and your uncle were kind of your coaches in the beginning?
I wouldn't say my coaches, but that's how they got into it. I had a kind of a stepdad through a marriage that was kind of the big enforcer on my training. And he had like a little bit of a football background. And by that, I kind of mean just that brute, almost an intimidation type of thing to just make me want to get up and go do it. You know, some people have it, some people don't. And that's kind of what he would drill into me. And unfortunately and fortunately, like it was tough, but I think, you know, looking back at it now, I'm very thankful for that kind of coaching, I guess, even though it's not 100% the right way to do it.
Okay. So how old are you now?
I just turned 24 in October.
Okay. So with that being said, how do you manage to have your personal life and your BMX life? How hard is it to separate the two?
Yeah. So I would say, fortunately and unfortunately, some injuries have been a key factor in kind of my perspective on everything. So rewinding a little bit, when I came back to racing at like 16, you know, I was still in high school and kind of just like kind of doing it on and off, but it gave me an opportunity to realize kind of what I wanted in the sport and what I didn't want. And I knew I had to work hard. And so what I did that people can learn from me is from 16 to like 18, I went full throttle, full gas, all in. And while I progressed really well, I ran into some injuries, and it ultimately broke me down pretty bad mentally, because all I knew at 17, 18 years old was BMX racing. And, you know, BMX racing was my life, and whatever result on the weekend was how I, you know, was that next week. You know, if I had a bad race, I'm all upset, and I wouldn't use the word depressed, but, you know, just down and upset. But then if I won the next race, then all of a sudden my life's good again. And so, yeah, it honestly took some injuries and kind of, some soul searching to find that balance. And now I kind of feel like what led me to where I'm at now and how I'm able to balance my life now is just kind of having that perspective, right? Like I wake up every day and I train and I know what I'm going for, but at the same time, I understand how important it is to have some type of life outside of racing to kind of keep a long career going, right? Because,
Right.
I guess another thing is, different people have different goals. Some people would rather get in the sport, hit it out for, 4 or 5 years really hard and then dip out. And some people, want to have a good long pro career. And so I know also a lot of people who kicked my butt on the way up, but don't race anymore. And whether it's because they wanted to or not, they probably hit that burnout point.
So the injuries you're speaking of, did they come from racing bikes or motocross or that's
Yeah. So I had a string of injuries, specifically in 2018, or I guess I should rephrase this. Growing up in BMX, the only thing I ever broke were my wrists, like all the time. And so like, while they were injuries, but like I would still race with my cast on because that was just kind of what you did. Like if you could grip your hands, take my cast into the doctor's office and see if it can mold around my thing, even if it was just for sprints or something, because like I said, at that time, that's all that mattered to me. And so I broke wrists growing up, but then when I got a little older, so like 18, 19, I did a wrist, but then I did a collarbone. In 3 years, sorry, I'm going all over the place, but in 3 years, I did a wrist, a collarbone, and then I had a really bad wrist injury, which made me get a complete wrist reconstruction. And that thing went from when you're breaking little bones here and there, it's probably like a 6, maybe 8 week max type of thing. Well, the wrist reconstruction took me 8 months. And so, yeah, that was a big kind of window to miss where, at that time I hadn't dealt with anything that significant. So for me, it was always, when's the next time I'm going to get back on the bike? When's the next time I'm going to get back on the bike? And that injury so happened to be like, when am I going to be able to turn a door handle, to open up the front door, so that kind of all hit me at once. But I guess coming back to your question, yeah, most or all of the injuries have just been from racing.
And do you ever fully overcome an injury, like mentally?
I would say you can get to that point, but I think no matter what, it's always going to be there, right? Like, so now I'm completely mentally over my injuries. Like, I'm not too worried about if I crash on this or if I do that anymore, but definitely some things hurt more than others as time go on. So I don't forget them.
Right. Me and Shannon were talking about the other day. It's like certain riders, when they're really, really fast until they have that one big crash, and they're still fast after, but you can tell there's just something different about how when they come back, you're like, they're not as aggressive as they were.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely true. And honestly, that I think also, like I said, led me to having balance in my life, because before then I was what I felt like unstoppable. And then, once that big one hits you, then it kind of challenges your character a bit and makes you kind of rethink some things. Now you might think a little more, before you get into the gate, before that injury or whatever.
Yep.
So what does an average day in your life look like?
Yeah. So fortunately, I'm able to do BMX full time. So right now it's just training. So normally I wake up, I have 2 training sessions a day, whether that be the gym or the sprints or being at the track. And so I live in Oldsmar, Florida now. So we're about 5 minutes away from the track. So I'll get up, have a breakfast. We have a pretty good crew that goes and rides. So we ride like 10 to 2 typically, which some sessions are gate specific. Some are doing full laps. Others are doing just little short stints of the track. And then I'll have a lunch. And then normally in the afternoon, I have some type of either recovery or another training session that I do. And then some of that is doing video review or just, trying to recover or kind of do that. So I used to do school. I graduated a few years ago. So I used to have school into that program, but since 2021, I've kind of just been stock full-time BMX. So it's been really nice.
So do you prefer to train with other people, like as far as, opposed to going to the track by yourself?
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to both. I've done both of them because when I lived in Bakersfield, I had a smaller local scene, so I would kind of ride by myself anyways. And I think I like them both. I think circumstantially, the more riders and the more competition helps you, but I do think there are also instances where riding on your own is beneficial because you can kind of focus in and lock in on just yourself and worry about yourself and not have to worry about all of the outside factors.
Okay.
What's your setup now that you're riding with?
So I'm going to be able to announce when I'm riding.
I almost had it, Shannon. I almost
had it. I'll be able to announce. I'll be able to announce what I'm riding on Friday, so a week from today.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, it's an aluminum frame. It's been around for a while, so.
Okay.
But if you want to know specs, I can let you know specs. But I can't disclose the information yet.
Yeah, so let me know a few of the specs. I always ask, like, what size cranks are you running?
I run 175s.
And what size bars?
Bars I run 7.5. But I just changed. So like, even though I didn't grow, I used to run a taller setup than I do now. So I went from 8 bars. And yeah, now I'm on 7.5 bars.
All right. And as far as let me just ask you this quick question. I mean, you're familiar with parts and brands, and what's the big difference between, like, just say a pair of Shimano DXRs and like the Behringer cranks that are out that a lot of people I see are popping on their bikes now? Is there like any difference in cranks? Does that make any difference? Like, oh my God, you know, I've seen people switch from Shimano DXRs to Behringers because they say they stiffer. No other, not because of color, and I can understand that maybe more than, like, you know, the stiffness. I'm like, oh, the XRs aren't stiff enough.
Right. So, truthfully, I do feel differences in different brands and different products, but between those two cranks, I think that the Behringers are lighter, and whereas the DXR is maybe a little bit heavier. But to be completely honest, other than maybe the Q factor, so like how far the crank actually bends, so like traditionally and almost every other crank other than a Behringer crank has a little bit of bow, if that makes sense. Like it kind of has a little bit, which I'm sure it's designed that way. And I think the Behringer is a little more straight. So I think technically straighter would be better power transfer maybe. But I'll tell you that I rode 3 different types of Pro Max cranks this year: carbon, HF2, and HF3, and I interchanged them throughout the whole year, and I couldn't really tell you a huge difference other than maybe that first, 2 laps around the track.
So why did you switch out on the cranks? Is it because you were burning through them, or?
No, I was testing a lot of things. So
okay,
when I was with like the World Cups and the Pan Am Games and stuff, we just are testing stuff all the time. So like I tried like a super light bike setup, what was like carbon rims, forks, cranks, bars, all that, and then kind of was just trying to figure out what recipe was going to work with me the best. So but Pro Max just made 3 different types of cranks, so it was honestly really nice.
Did you find that a lighter setup was faster for you, being smaller?
Yeah, so and that's where I'm kind of in a good position right now. Is so I did find that the lighter setup is faster out of the gate, but it's also less comfortable around the track, especially if it's windy. So like a place maybe like Reno or somewhere where a smaller hill, I think a lighter bike is gonna be better. But when you're talking about a supercross hill with all the G forces, and a place that I really lack on is the weight, pushing those backsides and gaining speed on the big tracks, a heavier setup actually suits me a little bit more because it's helping me kind of gain more speed around the track. Whereas if I have the light bike, it might get me out of the gate and down the, the hill really well, but I might hit some headwind in I weigh 160 pounds. I'm just going to get blown away versus if I'm racing with someone like Nick Kieman, who's, 6'3", 6'4", and weighs 200 pounds. Like I stand no chance if I'm not on a little bit heavier equipment.
Okay. So let me ask you, so you were on a carbon frame before, correct?
Yeah, correct.
So when's the last time you were on an aluminum frame? And did you ride the aluminum frame that you're going to be riding now? Do you have the setup already, or?
So I got my bikes right after the Grands. So I've been on them now for a couple of weeks. I haven't ridden an aluminum frame since 2016. So I rode, the aluminum frame I'm referring to is the first generation Rift I rode.
Okay.
And then I got on to Haros for a couple of years after that. And then I went to Supercross, and then I went back on Haros. So I've literally been on carbon for the past like 6 to 8 years. So I definitely was a little nervous with the change, but yeah, so far so good. So it's been good.
I'm asking that because I've seen some of you guys like on the gate and just putting your a little bit of pressure on the forward pedal, and I see the whole frame flexing. The carbon,
Right.
I mean, you just, of course, you don't see that. And I'm just wondering how you would feel like being on an aluminum frame after being on a carbon frame so long. You have no problem with that? It feels
Yeah.
good to
So
you?
I mean, it took me so very fortunate. This brand was able to make me a spec bike that I wanted to mimic. So I made it as close to my previous setup as I could. And the only real
Awesome.
area that I felt difference was out of the gate, but I think a lot of it was the bottom bracket height and maybe not so the stiffness, because although maybe carbon has different flex, it still does have some flex. So I think any bike is gonna, like I said, twitch a little bit. But yeah, I didn't really see as a dramatic difference as I thought I would, but I will say that it did take me like 2 or 3 track sessions to really feel like, okay, I'm good. I'm back. The first couple I was like, I don't know about this one. But I also I've been riding the same Haro frame specs for the last 4 years almost. So it was whatever frame I went to, even if it was gonna be like a prophecy or something, which it's not. I feel like would have felt different, anyways.
Right.
I mean, would companies make a one-off carbon frame for their riders to, just if you like required one and like, I can't do this, bro, like I gotta ride a carbon, would they?
I think if the return on investment was big enough, but I'm not sure that we have athletes that are doing that quite yet.
I
Hopefully in
got
the future they would.
I mean, I've heard the stories of people getting to ride whatever bike that they want, and then they just put the decals or whatever the sponsor is, and they're just like, yeah, let's just go ahead and run it that way. Obviously we're not close enough to actually see what, like, oh, that's not that kind of bike.
Yeah, but I've also been on the other side where that was a big deal.
Oh,
So
Yeah, for brands, you would think it is a big deal, especially when
when
somebody gets a close up, bro, and throws it all over Instagram or something,
yeah, throws it close up, and then they see a sticker, and then you get a couple of comments that are like, "Hey, that's not what that is," and then you're like, "Oh,"
oh
and then
yeah,
you get a
Mhm.
phone call.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What was your aha moment when you knew that you made it?
I still don't really feel that way. But I think there's been three pivotal moments kind of in my career that proved to myself that I could make it, if that makes sense. So when 2021 Grands, I got second, and I had won one of the mains, and that was kind of my first real feeling of like running the top pace with Joris. Like I was battling with Joris and Corbin at the time in 2021. And like growing up, those are the guys that I, looked up to and always raced. And I feel like every athlete that is kind of getting into that crest has that kind of mental space to where like they go from, I mean, it's cliche. They go from your idols to your rivals, but I feel like you actually have to actually believe that they're your rivals. I think that's easy to say, like, oh yeah, like, now I'm racing these guys, so now I'm their competition. But I think it takes one race or one season or something for you to really be like, okay, like now I'm getting in the gate, and I don't care if I hear Corbett. Like now it's no longer cool to hear their name in the gate. You know what I mean? Now they're just another name. And I do think that's a process. I think no matter how strong mentally you feel like you are, I still do think that everybody kind of goes through that.
Mhm.
And then truthfully, like I struggled kind of up and down, kind of been on a good little wave, but I think this year obviously was a pretty big breakthrough year for me. And the Pan American Games was a really big milestone for me to kind of re-believe in myself, because I
Right.
think that just like everything in life or in work or in sport, you're kind of on this upward trajectory, but you're always dealing with challenges, right? So like at first it's like be, the best novice, then it's be the best intermediate. And you know what I'm kind of getting to. But when you get into pro or elite racing, like now that there's not a pro anymore, like you become a moto fill guy. Then you get into the main events, then you're kind of in that 4th through 6th and you're just grinding for that podium. Well, then you get the podium, then you're trying to become a winner. And I hadn't really had a big kind of international stage win until this year. And I was able to win the Pan American Championship, which is kind of a little more under the blanket. That was earlier this year, but it was a continental championship. And then, the Pan Am Games, when I won it, I kind of finally was able to hit a little bit of a debrief moment where I'm like, okay, like I proved it to myself finally that I can come through when it matters, when it's crunch time.
Oh no.
He'll be back.
I lost you.
There we go.
Can you see me?
Yep, we got you.
You're good. You're good. Anyways,
oh, no.
But I would just say that the Pan Ams this year was kind of the moment to me where I kind of re-believed in myself and kind of can now set my sights. Now I'm not really chasing that next win. Now I'm just chasing, the self-improvement and I don't have any more doubt, in my mind. So
Okay.
I think this year was the big step.
So let me ask you, when you became pro, when you became pro, how were you accepted like by the other pros? Like that's been pros for the last couple of years. Are they like really cool? Like, oh, what's up, Cam? We like waiting for you, bro. Or are they like, yo, don't talk to me. Like you didn't earn the right to talk to me yet, Or is it a little of both?
Yeah, I think I was still fortunate enough. So when I turned pro, there was still a pro. And so when I turned A pro, a lot of people turned A pro at the same time. So we were kind of all just newbies. But then for sure, when I went from A pro to Elite, there is kind of that, like, I wouldn't even say disrespect, but until you show that you're competitive, I feel like some people won't give you the time of day. And then once you're competitive, or once you kind of, and it sounds super weird, but once you kind of get that one result or that one little sliver of like, okay, like this guy's serious, then I started getting a couple more high fives or how's the day going. But when I was younger, 18, 19, 20, I was getting up there with my, I'm just little fish, big pond type thing for sure. But I wouldn't say anybody was really disrespectful to me. I just feel like maybe some people wouldn't give me the time of day, which is completely okay because, that's just how sport is, kind of competition.
Right.
And is it the same when you leave the States with like international riders?
Yeah,
for
like, sure.
Or do they welcome you like, oh my God, guys from the States, bro, come on, man, hang with us?
No, it's kind of that same thing. Like you almost need a result or some kind of aha moment for them to be like, oh, cool. Like, how's it going? Yeah. I see you've been killing it. Cool. But until you break that, I don't even know what kind of barrier it is, but until you get to where you're of topic, it's pretty hard to, to fit in. But at the same time, fitting in isn't really the goal. It's to race your bike. So
where's the weirdest place somebody's recognized you?
Weirdest place.
Well,
Honestly,
most people say airports.
Airports, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it's that big for us, but I'll say like the coolest place has been going to some of those smaller South American countries, because I think their fan base is so big and genuine and loyal to whoever they are, whether it's Mariana or Carlos or whatever. And so after winning a few races or just being maybe a little bit more well known in the BMX space, the going to those countries is always super cool because you do feel a little bit like a rock star. And whether it's for me personally or just any pro BMX racer in general, like they're trying to get everybody's autograph, they're trying to get everybody's picture, because we're American, we're a little bit more sought after. So they're trying to get anything with an American's glove or American's goggle lens, American's number plate, like anything. So I don't think any like places that have been like weird to me where I haven't expected it have happened yet. But I would say the coolest place is South America for sure.
Have you ever been to a place like with your group friends with the bikes and like a little nervous of the area that you were in? Like a little
Yeah, for sure. So my roommate and I actually went to the Continental Champs were in Ecuador. And in this certain area, it was the city name was Riobamba, and it was very I don't want to disrespect anyone, but I wasn't very comfortable.
That's how I was trying to be careful of how I worded it.
Yeah, for sure. It was one of those experiences where when I left, I was happy that we were all safe, and like I could care less about how the race went. It was like, okay, we're here. It was super cool to see this. Cool. Let's get out of here as fast as we can. But again, that's part of the journey, and
Right.
I think that like again, those fans, and that's actually what I was referring to, like those people that were all there at the race, super respectful, super cool, full of energy, and those are like some of the kids I feel like appreciate BMX the most because they maybe aren't as fortunate as we are in America and get to see all the, cool races and the big races. Like they were just so welcoming and so, excited just to have people. Like there's people hanging off the side of their houses, waving their shirts over to watch the race because they weren't in the actual facility. They were just, stand by watching and stuff. And like, everybody was really excited in that country. So.
Do they so those events, they charge people to go into those things, or is it free?
No, that race I think in particular was free.
Okay.
Like the World Cups and stuff, I think you have to pay something, but it's not too expensive. But most of the other races other than the World Cups are pretty much like in the States where it's free spectators.
Do you have any horror stories while traveling to a race? Like through like maybe losing your bike in an airport or getting to a car crash or something like on the way to a big race?
Nothing too crazy, but last year in Colombia, I got my chain snatched from me. So that was that was a different one. Like I went to I went out early in the race program or whatever. So we went to some local spot to get some food, and I was with a bunch of BMXers, so I felt like I was in a decently safe area. But yeah, somebody came up from behind me and snatched my chain and hopped on a dirt bike, and they were gone. So it was the first time. I mean, luckily nothing like crazy happened, but I definitely felt super vulnerable in that country for the rest of the time I was there because I'm like, there's just no way that like this happened. Like this is actually crazy. And like we had meetings, and on those types of trips, the team orchestrates meetings, and we have a decent amount of security around us at all times while you're in the event. So it was really my fault, but I definitely didn't think that like me going to the local little taco joint right outside of the venue, I was going to be able to get taken advantage of, but I was.
That's wild.
Other than that, some bikes normally come delayed just because there's so many at one time, but no other horror stories other than that.
Have you ever had to use somebody else's bike other than yours for a big race?
Not for a big race, luckily. This past year, actually, in Rock Hill, I broke my hub in the semi, and we have to do those B mains if we want points. So I rode my old teammate Anthony's bike, and had some fun on it. And then Rock Hill's a pretty big track, so I'm like, I'm gonna see if I can jump the berm jump still on his bike, but it was fine. But fortunately, that's really been the only time where I've had to ride, someone else's equipment, other than like maybe someone's helmet if my helmet didn't make it, or some clip shoes or something like that. But most of the time we travel with two bikes to try to prevent that.
I was gonna say, you have two bikes. So with two bikes, are they the exact same setup, or do you do something a little different with the other one? Like, all right, I changed the gear on this one, so that way I have to go and do it. One's a 45, 44,
Yeah,
so like that?
When I go to the actual race, my bikes are set up the same. But yeah, like right now my bikes have two different gears on them. So like one will be whether it's a training gear, or if I'm just testing something, if I want, a 44 or 45, like you mentioned, or if I wanted to try a 50. One bike is kind of the one that I'll work on more, and then I'll leave one that's just completely race setup. So then that kind of becomes my race bike, and then I'll bring the spare when it's time to go. I'll make sure both gears are ready, whatever that one is. That way, if I get a flat tire or I break a stem or anything, it's just a complete easy swap over, and I'm good to go.
So what gearing do you normally run?
So on a small hill, I normally run a 44-16, and on the big hill, I'll probably run a 47.
A 47-16.
47-17.
So 17.
Yeah. So it's about the same ratio, but
okay.
They feel a little bit different to me. So.
And so, what is the training gear then?
So sometimes it's all over the place. Sometimes it can be a hard gear. Sometimes it'll be an easy gear. It just kind of depends on what my coach has me do. So like right now, I'm trying to build a little more strength just because we had a little bit of time, which now the first race of the season is already in 2 weeks. So it's almost over. So like right now in particular, they're on a harder gear versus an easy gear. But during the season, it kind of just changes all the time.
So with the harder gear, would you just do everything on that? Like do sprints, do track work, do just
I normally don't do like gates on any other gear, but I've ridden the track or done sprints with both a harder gear and an easier gear. But I typically will only do the gates on something that's in that realm of 44 or 47 or 46. I wouldn't ever do a hard gear just because I feel like you completely wrench your form.
because that's what I used to do as a kid. I rode a harder gear during the week and then threw on the lighter gear to race. And I felt like it helped me. But when I came back, I was told not to do that. They just said, train on the gear that you're going to race with. And I just always heard that. You're one of the first people that I heard that has like a training gear, you know?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I train like on a specific gear all the time. For instance, what you're kind of explaining, I wouldn't normally do, but there might be like one session during a week that I have a harder or an easier setup compared to my race gear. But I wouldn't do like, if I had, say, 3 track sessions in 1 week, I probably wouldn't have the harder gear on for every single track session, if that makes sense.
Got you. Yeah. All right.
And same thing with the easier.
Okay. I'm like, so if you ever wonder why there's a pause between us, it's because me and him are both taking mental notes on what we can take from
yeah. No, you're good. You're good.
Because we both look at each other and like we'll make eye contact. Like, are you getting that? We're gonna try that one.
No, you're good. I'm like I said, I'm here for you guys, and I'm willing to spill out whatever you guys want to know, other than the.
So your dad was a factory dad?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And I honestly, even helping kids now or people that want to get help sometimes, I always have to kind of look at their factory dads and see how they are, because sometimes I won't necessarily agree with some of those things. And then that's always a conversation of discussion. But yeah, I did have very much so had a factory dad.
Cool. Did he do your bike work, or did he teach you how to do your own bike work?
He did most of the bike work, but he would always make me sit there at least. So I was always like, whether I was paying attention or not, kind of here and there. And like, sometimes he would test me like, oh, what do you do with this? And I'd be like, but he would never let me touch it, but he would for sure have me at least hanging out in the garage or being there to at least look and kind of know. And then I think around like I had one instance when I was like 12. I went to a race in Florida with just my mom, and I had lost, well, I didn't even lose it, but it was in the bike bag. We didn't find it. And it was like a headset cap or headset, the little shim. Completely didn't know anything about it. Put the bars on, bars wouldn't move. And that was the one trip that when I got home, I was let know that I need to know how to work on my bike. And since then I've been able to work on my bike. No to say that.
So did your dad ever race?
No.
Did you ever want him to?
I think when I was either crying because I thought I was working too hard, or throwing up after a sprint session, or something like that, I always wanted him to, just to like feel what I was feeling, because I feel like there's a pro and con with that, right? Like there's a spot where the parent is pushing your kid to our limits, which we think are our limits, which really aren't most of the time, but pushing your kid to be better, and then also maybe not understanding exactly what's going on. And so I feel like I wanted him to race just because of that, because like there'd be times where I would do a bunch of full laps in a row and I would be like dead. And he's like, I don't understand why you're dead. It's 30 seconds. And you're like, well, why don't you get on your bike? You know what I mean? So I feel like for that instance, yeah, but I don't think I ever really cared to, see him compete or anything like that.
Did you ever line up with your mom?
No, not anything like that. I think he maybe came out to the track like once or twice on like if the local track had a mom-son race or something, like on Mother's Day or something.
Okay.
She kind of flows around. She gives me a hard time sometimes that I don't have a bike available for her to ride when I like come home and stuff, but I don't know if she'd actually ride it. I think she just says it.
Did you ever race cruiser?
No, I was never allowed to race cruiser.
Wow.
Yeah, it was. I think it's a little more competitive now, but at the time when I was growing up and getting into there, cruiser kind of was looked at as maybe not this so important class. and I would just do open in class. And maybe that wasn't the direct reason, but it also could have either been because maybe they didn't want to buy another bike, or because they felt like going from one wheel to the other wheel would have made a big difference. I remember I rode a cruiser one time, and I went to manual and I hit my butt on the tire and ate it. And that was I've only ridden a cruiser one time. One time.
Really?
And yep, one time. And it was in practice. Like, it was like, oh, my buddy has a cruiser. You want to ride it? I was like, my dad never let me do this when I was growing up. Heck yeah, I want to hop on your cruiser. Went on the cruiser, went to do a double manual, hit my butt over the bars.
Gee.
Yeah, that's why they have the butt protectors now.
Yeah.
All the old guys use them, especially.
Yeah.
So what about any other style of bikes? Road bikes, mountain bikes, dirt jumpers? Did you ever get park and freestyle stuff? Or?
Yeah, so that's honestly where a lot of my passion for BMX came from. Like, I grew up, you know, in the neighborhood, riding my bike, going to little miscellaneous dirt spots where they're building new houses or maybe a new gas station, bringing shovels, sneaking them in there, building a lip and jumping as far as you can. You know, we had there wasn't a lot to do in Bakersfield. I don't know if you guys have ever been there or familiar with the area, but there's just kind of dirt.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like growing up, like, my parents would give me $20 and that would last me for like 3-4 days during the summer. We would just go to McDonald's, get a cheeseburger and a sweet tea, and hit this spot, ride to this dirt jumps, spend the night at this guy's house. I never really got into the tricks and stuff at the skate park because, honestly, realistically, everybody that was at the skate park was smoking dope. But we, you know, were doing our own jumps. Like I said, a lot of it was, I had some friends that were in new neighborhoods, so we would go build. One summer we'd have jumps, the next summer they'd get torn down, and then the next summer we would go to the park and then build jumps. And so yeah, I grew up riding those, like dirt jumpers, park bikes type of thing, but I never really got into freestyle.
Okay. That's pretty
So
cool.
I've watched and I think like Caroline Buchanan, she might have done it before. I know Drew Polk, I've seen him do dual slalom before. That looks really cool. Would that be ever something that you would possibly be interested in doing?
Yeah, I think it's really cool too. I'd say if you asked me that a few years ago, I might have said yeah. But now I don't think that I would have the same excitement for that as I would have a few years ago. I think that even that type of riding takes a different type of skill that I feel like would be very challenging mentally to like hop right into. And if you're not good, then you kind of have to be like, okay, well, like, how long is this going to take me to be decent at? I think I would do it for fun, but I'm not sure you would see me at a dual slalom competition. I think I'm a little too competitive to do that. And then with that, there are big cruiser wheels, so I'd probably loop out and hit my butt on the tire too.
So I watched some of those downhill races, and those guys are insane.
Right.
But then I watched the dual slalom guys are also, but that was more like BMX, you know, to me, you know, and I was like, that is cool, man.
That's cool. Yeah, I a few, like, growing up during the summer, we maybe would go to like the mountains, and I would like rent a mountain bike and stuff, and would ride them a few times, and they were really fun. I don't know like how fast I would be able to go, but actually jumping the trails and not pedaling as much as we do, it was kind of nice.
Do you know the top speed that you ever got on your BMX bike?
I think it would be safe to say around 38, somewhere around there. Like going down that Supercross hill, especially like if there's no wind or there's tailwind, and you have like your best gait and you're going on the jumps, you can get just under 40, I think.
Were you at Rock Hill right before Grants?
Yeah, I was.
So wasn't the sun kind of crazy on Sunday?
Yeah, they it's not their fault, but the time of the year with that track, man, and even we had a race at the beginning of the year in Oldsmar that was pretty brutal as well. We're kind of like, dude, like, come on, like, I don't know if I can do this, but I mean, it's the same for everybody. So
I know I went over there and I went to one of the tents and I saw Johnny Vance over there, and I was like, dude, what visor is going to work for me where I can actually see the track? So he's kind of breaking down like the glares on everything. And I was like, okay. And I was like, how much are these? He's like, these ones are like 300. So how much are these ones? He's like, I think those ones are like 150. I said, okay, I'll be back.
I'll be back. I'm just gonna start blinking.
Right. I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
man, like that sun was brutal on Sunday. It's like you look and then you're just like trying to find something. One of ladies
and
on our team
realistically,
crashed.
that's an extra like variable racing that day. You know, like you had to be very, and that's I think even something that is just different with experience. Like I went into that race knowing, okay, hey, I'm not going to be able to push as hard into the turns because I'd rather be safe and make it to the finish line than maybe go gung ho and hope. Whereas some kids are just either full throttle or they just don't even think about those things. Although 24 is not super old, now that I'm kind of in the mid of my pro career, I kind of know when to hold them, when to fold them. So that day specifically, I was like, all right, let's get to the first turn, see where we're at. If we're competitive, and if not, today might not be our day because I'm not jumping into a dark ray of abyss.
Right.
Do you have a routine when you're entering the gate? Like when you're in staging? Are you loose?
Yeah.
Are you like super focused? How are you?
Yeah, so I think it's changed over the years, but what I actually try to do is put myself in a more like a more pressured situation in practice so that the race doesn't feel as bad. And so I do have the same kind of thing going on when I get into the gate, but it can kind of also be different just depending on the scenario, like kind of what my job and my task is at that one moment. So like no matter what, you kind of already know what kind of, and especially in pro, like what gate you're in, like if you're on a couple points or not on points, or you have to get out, or like basically what I'm saying is I think the mind, the mental space in every gate is the same, but I think the steps leading up to that could be different depending on what time of day it is. But I really don't do anything too special. Like I visualize the lap, how I want to do it. I have keywords, which is something that my coach worked on me with many years ago that I just do. I say a few things to myself. I say a little prayer. I get in, and then my gate routine is always kind of the same. And then, like over, I guess the past like year and a half, it's honestly gotten a little bit more lax, but I think that just comes kind of from confidence, versus like when I was, 18, I had everything down to a T, exactly how I wanted to do it. And then if it didn't go right, I was like so screwed because I wasn't expecting, you know what I mean? I wasn't prepared for that. So I think like now I've trained my brain to kind of be a little bit more lax, not, off par by any means, but more accepting of like everything that could happen and not being so, okay, it has to be like this and it's got to work like this. Cause if not, there's no other way. I'm kind of like, all right, kind of bring everything up to it, get in the gate, do your thing. And then, after you get out of the gate, then you kind of figure out what you're going to do, because obviously there's a million different things you can't control, that happen from the gate, even to the 30-foot line, somebody flinching, the pause being long, somebody dropped their clip shoe, somebody cut you off. There's just so many different things that happen after the gate that I feel like some people may almost ruin their chances, before they even step in it.
So do you listen for the beep or are you watching the lights at the gate?
This is actually a really funny question. I've been back and forth a whole cycle now. Growing up, I watched the light always. And then I felt like when I got onto the Supercross hill at like 17, if I was in like gate 4 or 5, I'd look too far one way or the other trying to look at the light, and it would make me come out of the gate crooked. So then I started listening, and I listened for 2 years. And then this past year, I started looking at the light again. And I did that because of reaction time. I think that you see before you hear.
So I've tried it. Somebody told me try watching the lights, and I keep hitting the gate. I'm just way too fast on it, and I'm just like, what am I doing, bro? Like, I just know that is good, probably watching the light, because I'm getting out quicker, but it's a little too quick, and I think I need to either lean back or just pause for a second.
It probably has to do like with the form more so, because you can actually delay how fast you get out of the gate with a higher or a lower pedal. So I feel like the reaction stuff is kind of personal. Like I know great starters who listen, and I know great starters that watch the light, and at the end of the day, they both won races. But those other things, can be solved with different tactics.
So also another question: how mentally do you deal with like somebody crashing in the motor before you, and they're just like out in the track for the next 15 minutes? You're sitting on the gate. I mean, you're ready to go, bro. And then you just gotta sit and wait.
Yeah. A thing that I kind of have come to is like almost putting it in the way of like everybody's dealing with the same thing. So how can I just make this the best case scenario for me? Like, so before we're growing up, I would be like, oh man, same thing. Oh, waiting here. Then I'd get in the gate and have a super late gate or a super bad lap because I wasn't mentally in it. And now I kind of try to use those things for like almost a little bit of an edge, right? I'm like, okay, somebody's down, obviously hope they're okay. But like, hey, how many people are nervous right now? Okay, cool. Like, let's use this to our advantage. And a good example was the Pan American race that I won in October. We sat on the gate for probably, it felt like 2 minutes, but probably like 30 seconds of just sitting there before they even clicked the button. And in that 30 seconds, I had so much time to think. But like all I thought was like, oh, everybody's nervous right now. Like this is perfect. Like no one else, because obviously you don't practice that. You don't practice sitting on the gate at your local track and waiting however long for someone to go, unless someone obviously does crash at your practice. But I think again, in those moments are kind of when I try to turn my brain into how can I make this better for me versus how can I let this affect me.
Man, I hope I remember that. That is a jewel, bro. Like really.
Right. Because I know when we were up there and like you see somebody like go down in front of us, and I look over there and it makes me like completely reevaluate my life and what I'm doing right now. I'm just
or another rider says something to you on the gate like, "Dang, that's crazy," or "Do you see that?" And like, not that they're trying to get in your head, but that stuff just does get in your head. Like we're human. Like you hear things, you see things, and all of a sudden you're like, dang, what? And then they're like, oh, here we go. And you're like, oh,
you're like, no, there they go.
How do I
I'm
lock
just gonna
that
roll
gate?
this one out.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have one race that you wish you could do over?
Honestly, no. I think that every race has led me to exactly where I need to be.
Awesome.
I think there would be too many if I said yes. Any race that I didn't win.
Got you. Good answer.
How important is mental health in this game?
Man, it's more important than the physical, to be completely honest, because like we had mentioned a little bit earlier, like trying to find balance in life is important, but also kind of realizing that your self-identity and your self-worth isn't based off of a result, I think is important. And then also as an athlete, as anybody, I think it's really easy to be your hardest critic. So I think for both cases in that sense, mental health is huge. And I think that, if I didn't get help, because I have gotten help with psychologists and sports psychs and stuff like that, I feel like my career would be a lot shorter than, maybe it will be when this is all said and done, because I was able to, get help or at least talk to somebody about those things because
major.
I think, and I think just touching back on it, because it does mean a lot to me. Like that's that pivotal age of like 16, 17, 18, when these kids are chasing these NAG titles and these national titles and these race wins, right? Like at that moment in time, it feels like everything to you. Obviously as adults and people that are distant from the sport, they understand that there's more to life than a BMX race, but sometimes you do get into that zone that no one's going to be able to take you out of. And I think it's really important to kind of find a place in your life where you feel that, you race BMX because you like it and it's fun and you're competitive and you want to win. But at the end of the day, your life isn't all that bad if you don't get that result that you want, or, you don't, correct. And I think that it's very, very easy to talk about if you haven't been through it, but being like going through it and kind of having that realization and now kind of being where I'm at now, I wish somebody could have showed me that in a different way. I wish I didn't have to go through the things that I went through to get there, but overall I'm a better, person, athlete, rider, because, I've kind of found myself not needing, these results or these titles to make me happy as a person.
Right.
I was going to say a lot has to do with your mentors and the people that you look up to, and how they're going to respond to you losing. I've seen parents like totally chew their kids out for losing. So like they
Right.
think, yeah, if they lose, it is the end of the world because their dad is going to probably,
Yep.
who knows what might
I
happen.
went through the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's something that unfortunately not everybody can control. But at the same time, I hope that, everybody, does have a good mentor or somebody that they feel like they can talk to kind of get you through that. And I don't know how much time we have here, but my coach
No, we're good.
is a big influence in my life because of that. My coach is Ariel Martin, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with her story, but she was and made the Olympic team in 2012, and she, had done all the hard work, right? Everything to get there, done the results, did everything she had to do. And the track session before, or one of the track sessions before they were going to leave for London, her chain derailed and she like lacerated her kidney, and had to get airlifted and the whole 9 yards. And so, long story short, she almost died. Luckily, she didn't. But what I was able to learn from her experience, kind of was that the results don't mean everything to you, because at that time in her life, like that was everything, right? Like my whole dream is to go to the Olympics. I want to be an Olympian. I've worked my butt off to be here. I deserve to be here. So you feel, right? Regardless of religion or the upper power you believe in, you kind of feel like some things are owed to you. And she just, plain and simple, she didn't get to go. And she didn't get to compete, and she didn't get to race a race that she qualified for and did. And within that, she had to do a lot of soul searching and going through those things that were way harder than any of the things that I've had to go through on that side of things. And so, having her in my corner, she was kind of almost able to shove me in a direction to kind of learn that younger, because she learned that in the later part of her career. And so, she made it a big point for me to know and understand these kind of things before I get there, before there is a big breaking point, which unfortunately for her, was probably more major than anybody would pray on or hope that someone would have to learn a lesson. But for whatever reason, that's led her to be, obviously she was able to recover and do amazing things after that. But I think that her story was a big eye opener for me to kind of realize, like, hey, like, you can have a dream, you can have a goal, you can work hard for it every day, but also, again, the result doesn't, decide who you are as a person, but also like nothing in this sport is owed to you. So if you tie yourself too tight to it, it can fight back, and, you don't want to be in a lost place when this is all said and done,
Right.
So.
Yeah, because I use it as therapy, and I know a lot of other guys do too. I could have a totally shit day, and I go to the track, and then I don't even remember why my day was shit. It's bro, like, why was I mad? Like I'm totally happy right now. I'm at the track, I'm racing, or I'm riding. So I definitely feel like that plays a part.
That's what this sport is so good for, right? Like you can take it as serious or as lax as you want it, and it can be, beneficial in all those different ways. It can give you your therapy, it can give you your exercise, it can, depending on how hard you want to get into it, it can make you have discipline, it can show you camaraderie, it can show you competition, you can be the guy who's just going to the track and using it for, like I said, for that therapy, or you can, also be on the other side and try to be a professional athlete and do all those things. And I think that's like, at the end of the day, I think that's what's so great about our sport, is that you have that decision, right? Like you don't have to be this guy that's going to play in football, and once you get out of football in high school, you either have to go to college to go to the NFL, or you got to stop, right? Like BMX, you can be, there's a 60 and over class, you know what I mean? Like there's no 60-year-olds playing football, you know what I mean? Like because that's just not how those sports are designed. So I think we're very fortunate to be in a sport that, kind of allows us to do that.
And I've said that. I said, this is the only sport where I've seen 50 and 60-year-old men come, fresh, not knowing a thing about BMX. Next thing you know, they're at the track. They got a brand new bike. They got a helmet. Yep. They're like, man, I'm going to do this, bro. Like, because they see other older guys out there doing it, and it looks so fun, and we're in shape, and, they see the camaraderie, and they see the families that show up. And, it's just such a cool environment to be around. It always has been, When I was a kid and I wanted to quit, my mother was like, what am I going to do? Like, what am I gonna do now? You know, like all my friends are at the track, like that was our life, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite vet pro?
Oh, my favorite vet pro. I'm this will be biased, but I'm a big Nick Long fan for what he's kind of the direction that he's been able to change his like mental. I didn't really know him very well as he was a pro, but I think
Right.
it's been cool to see someone like him who has been obviously at the pinnacle of the sport kind of lash back and be just so BMX infused, because I
Right.
feel like that's a pretty big challenge, right? Like, and I'm not even throwing any shade, but there's a lot of people who raced at the pinnacle of the sport that as soon as they're done, they've had enough and they could care less, right? Like,
Right.
you don't see a lot of retired pros still, giving that much back to the sport. And I think, he's a pivotal guy right now in our sport, and he's doing a lot to try to change the trajectory of the sport, which means a lot.
Let me ask you this: do you think if he were to clip in, he would dust everybody?
I don't know. I think that maybe by now Barry would probably give him a run for his money. But I feel like maybe last year or the year, I don't know how long he's been vet, but I feel like year one, like if he only did flats for 6 months and then clip back in, I think he would be very, very competitive. I think for sure, on a small hill, like not a 5-meter hill, like I don't know if there's anybody touching him on one of those, but I feel like the bigger tracks, some of the other guys do have skills as well. So I don't know. I think it would be a good race.
Who was your go-to growing up that you always looked up to?
Yeah, my favorite rider was Donnie Robinson. Always. So I'm from California. He was up obviously NorCal-ish, but he gave me hope because of how small he was. And I noticed that no matter what, and obviously there's a lot of athletes and a lot of BMXers that didn't do it either, but there hasn't been a time in my mind where I saw him quit. Whether he was in 6th place, whether he was in 7th place in the semi, he went to the finish line. Not saying he went his hardest and he pushed out there, but what I always noticed for him as a kid was like, yo, that guy's head is below everybody's shoulders. And, and he was always trying, and that's kind of where, and kind of what I always wanted to do. And especially when I kind of got to the age of like knowing where maybe I would have some impact on some people younger than me, was I knew that like those two values stuck out to me, like the guy that never quit and, the guy that, whether it was perseverance or defied some odds of being smaller or whatever, I feel like those things gave me hope because there isn't a lot of people like that out there. So Donnie was always my go-to.
Yeah, that was me also. I was always looking for the smaller guys. Like, yo, there's a small guy over
Yeah,
there,
or just root for him. Like, hey, he's doing it.
I know.
It's possible.
It's funny that's how it is, because I was always the heavyset kid, so my guys were always like Frank Thomas for like baseball and just, Reggie White and the Fridge. I'm like, yeah, look at the big guys out there. Like,
yep. Yeah,
so,
it's inspiring, right? And it gives you that sense of hope that maybe you don't need the hope, but it's always good to see, right? Like, it's always good to see somebody that is in a similar situation, or maybe you think they are, like doing what you want to do.
Yeah, and he probably inspires more people than I do, because there's a lot of older guys that are bigger, and they're like, hold on, man, this guy's on a bike too. I've seen it. I've seen guys point out the big guy on the track and say, look how big that guy is, bro. Like, I could do it too. And sure enough, they'll get on the bike.
I call them out. Like, usually if I'm walking by and I see them with their kids, I'll be like, where's your bike? Let's go. They're like, what? And I'm like, you see me with mine. You like I'm good at it? Let's go. What you doing? Get your bike.
Yeah,
and they're just like, I don't know. And I'm like, come on, man. It's fun out there. So,
I mean, and we're always talking about how we can get more people into the sport. I mean, we love the sport so much. We want everybody to ride,
Right.
I mean, what's your suggestion on how we could make this sport a little more, just.
Yeah, I mean, I think that USA BMX has started with their foundation to try to help that transition. But when I was on a junior development team a few years ago, and Dale Holmes ran that along with Jamie Staff. But Dale Holmes does a really good job with the grassroots types of things. And he somehow got his brand or whatever into YMCA programs.
Nice.
And so over the summer, when kids are able to pick sports, BMX was an option. And
Really?
Wow.
yes, yeah. And so he's in San Diego. He does it with Tyler Brown a lot. Not Tyler Brown doesn't do it, but he uses Tyler Brown's track. And obviously Tyler Brown's a big impact to that local community as well. But I think that was the first time that I saw a way for BMX to kind of get into, household things. Because like your summer camp, there's basketball, there's football, there's baseball, and that's typically it. And,
Right.
for BMX to be a part of that, I think that's a very small step that would make, a big impact. And so, like I said, I think USA BMX is in the process, or they are doing it. I'm not, excuse my ignorance, but I'm not super up to date with what they're doing. But I do know that they run programs through the schools, at least locally in Oklahoma. And I think they're starting it there, and maybe I'm assuming we'll expand that. But kind of just getting bikes in front of people's faces, where it wouldn't be, because truthfully, like, I feel like if you gave a kid the decision to play a stick and ball sport or throw a bike in front of them, I think they probably would pick a bike. Most of them,
Right.
I feel like, would, but sometimes because that's not even an option, it doesn't get thought of. And then, they're out of there. And so I think even like just other people doing good for the sport, like I know that Mongoose has really nice level or entry level bikes that are available. Haro does that as well. I'm not sure if DK does it anymore, but Redline was a thing, because I think another thing that, and I'm kind of rambling here, but I think another thing that's hard is the entry level price, right?
Well, I was just going to touch on that also, and knowing that so your family knew about BMX already, so they already knew what they were getting into. I see
Right.
some of these families have no idea, and then once they realize, they're like, "Oh my god!" And sometimes it's too late. The kid's already hooked. Like, they're going to do whatever they want to do for little Johnny so he could race, and they're
Right.
dumping all this money into it. When they probably don't have to, because you could race on an entry level bike, get really
Correct.
good, move up, But they get to the track and they see the guys that are winning got carbon forks, carbon wheels. So now they got to get their kid carbon forks and carbon wheels, and now they're making it
and so
expensive.
and that's kind of what I feel like Dale did really well with his program. Was he kind of did, it was like BMX Pro for a week is the name of it or whatever. And so during the week, because I had to work some of them with my team deal, like that was kind of one of those things, which I had a great time doing it. But during that week, you would get a kid who has never ridden a bike before, and would get him on the bike. He learned how to get on his bike and ride, first of all. We would teach them, the do's and don'ts. Don't put your fingers near the chain. If your handlebars get twisted around, twist them back up. Pedals level, kind of the entry stuff. And throughout that whole entire week, you'd get a kid from maybe who had never ridden a bike they would actually put them at the end. And I'm not sure it was a sanctioned race, but they would let the kids race. On the last day, the parents could come. And that was the day for the parents to ask questions. How can I do this? How can I do that? And I think it worked, or it works well in that community, because then Tyler runs the track and has rental bikes and stuff. And so sometimes parents are able to go to the track, rent a bike, and have them kid race. So maybe for, $35 instead of $15, they're able to race and compete. And then obviously they've got to hope that they can come back and ride the same bike every time. But at least that's a step to kind of make them not have to do that initial investment and almost let little Johnny race for a month or two and try it. Because at the same time, like, if your kid's going to do baseball, you're still buying him cleats, you're still buying him a bat, you're still buying him a bag. The kid needs a helmet, a glove. Like, they're still spending that initial probably $300 to $700 to get the kid into it. But I will say I do think that's intimidating when you see obviously a kid with a carbon fiber frame at 7 and the other kids riding this Walmart bike. They're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to afford that anytime soon, so we might as well not even try.
Right.
But I love when I see the kids with the stock bikes coming to the track and whipping those kids.
Absolutely,
and then dad's looking at their kid like, bro, I just bought you a $3,000 bike. You better win,
You better.
And it's not the bike, bro. I keep telling them it's not the bike, man.
Yep, absolutely.
I forgot to. How old were you when you went to your first Grands?
I was 8.
You were 8, and you've been going like every year ever since, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. So I took time off from 13 to 15. So I went probably 8, 9, 10, 11, and then probably missed out 12, 13, 14, 15, and then started back again at 16. So pretty much I've been to a couple, but I haven't been to all of them.
Was it always electrifying to be there, or was it something that once you got older, you're just like, whoa?
No, man, the Grands is the one that you want to do.
I've never been, so that's why I'm always
Okay.
like, I hear about it, and Shannon's gone.
Okay.
He's just like, it's a whole nother level of just like
Man,
energies in that building.
It's literally like Christmas when you were 5 every single year, even though like just from the whole build up, obviously with the atmosphere. I think what is super funny that I've realized is like I used to it used to actually not be a thing I would look forward to because it meant it was a lot of pressure.
Right.
You know, especially with factory dads, you know, they spend all this money all season long.
Right.
They're expecting a nag plate, and if you don't make that main event as a kid, like your whole week or your whole year almost seems like it's for nothing. And I think
Right.
it's been nice, like as I've gotten older and even racing pro, like not that you're not in charge of your own fate back then, but I don't feel like the season is weighed as heavy on that result, right? Like I've gone to Grands as a pro and done well.
Right.
This last year was well for me as well, but like last year I didn't do very well at the Grands, and like it didn't hurt as bad as maybe when I was, 15, and you have these nag points and you have all these people that you haven't raced all year, and you go to this one race and it's literally you're one lap away from your whole year being nothing to some
Right.
people.
Right.
I think that causes a lot of stress. And so I feel like I have a new appreciation for the Grands now, like kind of just being a pro. But I think no matter what, it's always, to me, like one of the biggest races that I always like want to do well at. I think that it's easily top 4, even putting all the races up there on a list. I think the Grands is going to be in anybody's top 4 or 5 for sure.
Right. Right.
I know it sucks for the riders when it comes down to one lap at the end of the year, but
Yeah.
it makes it so exciting for us watching it.
I know even I watched most, like really all of the expert girl and expert boys mains. Like I even still watched it on Sunday, like back home, because it still intrigues me. I might not keep up throughout the whole season, but I do enjoy watching the competition, kind of watching how some kids will be able to come through. It seems like a lot of the kids, if there's a one winner, there's always a lot of they can kind of repeat the process.
Mhm.
But it's also cool seeing, the people that you wouldn't expect to win come out and win. And,
Right.
I know it means a lot to them.
Cool. So what is your meal prep going into a national? Do you change anything?
I don't change anything too crazy. No, I think the only thing that I do on a weekly basis that I wouldn't do closer to the race is eat red meat. I don't know the exact science behind it, but I know it takes your body a little longer to digest that stuff. So I just get told not to. But typically, like I'm eating the same types of things. I'm eating protein source. I'm eating rice, and I'm typically trying to get some fruits and vegetables in there.
Okay.
During the race, actually, I do a lot of like simple sugars. So I'll have like I don't know if you've ever seen those little like applesauce packets. So like for instance, during the Grands main events at night when they're all kind of close together, like I'm not really a big foodie during the race, so I'm not gonna be able to eat like a peanut butter honey sandwich or anything like that. So like I'll finish the race, put a little like corner of a protein bar in my mouth, and then suck up the applesauce to give me some sugar and kind of put that throughout the day. But if we're like doing a traditional race that's spread out through that long time, I still try to hit those 3 big meals as best as I can and almost overdo them. So like if I know, hey, like the race starts at 11:30 and I'm not going to race until 12, I'm either going to eat early and then eat again, like eat an early breakfast at say 7 and then eat again at 10:30 and then let my body take that hour and a half to kind of digest, or I'll wait super, super long and just eat at the 10:30, 11 that one time and try to get it as close as I can to the race without like,
Right.
eating something throughout the entire day, because I'll throw up even if it's not like I'm in shape or not. My body just doesn't really do too well with that.
Okay.
So no cheeseburgers in between motos.
No, I wish. I feel like honestly, like I probably could. I just feel like it would make me feel like crap.
Ask
I mean,
Evan.
it works for it works for some. It works for some.
Right. And
Because I was
honestly,
like, they're like,
I've
what
seen-
are you,
I've
they're like,
seen
what are you
people
eating
eat
right
some-
now? And I'm like, I got a double cheeseburger, some nachos, the Sprite.
Yeah.
All this dude
Like,
was
yeah, but
killing
you
like,
gotta
me, bro.
race.
even funny story. Like I know that I'll do an applesauce or whatever, but like I know Joros will eat Skittles if he needs simple sugar. And like
Yeah.
some people's parents would be like, "Oh, you're not having Skittles," but like sometimes like you just gotta get in whatever you can get in, and whether it's
Yeah.
really that good for you or not, in that moment you're burning all those calories anyways, and your body's just exerting energy. So you kind of just give it whatever it needs. And if it is a cheeseburger, then hey, so be it. You know what I mean? I'm not one to judge.
I just started getting onto the Skittles too. Like I noticed it's almost like it takes the fear out of me. I eat the Skittles right before I go, and the
Okay.
sugar rush makes my eyeball pop, and I'm like,
There you go.
all right, let's go. Like I'm ready to I'm gonna send it today. And they're just like, no, you're not. Relax.
Have you guys experienced with caffeine or no?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He has.
Yeah. Caffeine will make you go too. You got to be careful with it, but caffeine can make you go. I don't think I don't think after the grands, I don't think I slept all night because I was that juiced up of caffeine and adrenaline. So
I gotta try some of that Cuban coffee before I race one day, man. That stuff gets you going, bro.
man, have you you guys friends with Jeff Upshaw?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
should
we got
ask
him.
him about his time trial in Manchester. He had a little bit too much coffee.
We gotta make sure to ask him about it.
one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He might not want to talk about it.
What's your
Yeah,
favorite
maybe
movie?
Favorite movie? I'm into comedy stuff, so I really enjoy like the 21, 22 Jump Streets. I think those are funny. The Hangovers are funny to me. If I'm gonna watch a movie, like I said, it's gonna be comedy.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite comedian?
No, not really. I think just those types of movies. Nothing in particular.
What kind of music do you listen to?
I'm kind of all over the place, but if I for hype up and just for chill, I really like country music. I just think that it's really good. And then I listen to rap, and then I also listen to like reggaeton, which is like kind of like South American, like little like not dancing music, but stuff with good beats and kind of just keeps the vibes good. So it just kind of depends what mood I'm in. I've listened to hardcore rap where I felt like I was ready to get down with it before a main, and I've also listened to Taylor Swift before a main event. It kind of just depends on what mental space I'm in, if I need to calm down or if I feel like I need to get hyped or whatever. But my music taste is pretty broad.
Have you ever been to a race where they played music during the race?
Yeah, they do it in South America a lot, actually.
Yeah, I've seen some nationals down there, and they also do it. There was the British National Championship, I think. They were playing music during the motos. So
yeah, that's pretty sick.
As soon as the gate drops, the music plays. It's like when they're in the gate, it's quiet. But as soon as the gate drops,
but you know what's funny? Obviously, you guys know 9 times out of 10 you don't even hear that when you're racing because
that's usually a question I ask. Can you hear what's going on? Do you hear the announcers or the crowd or?
Yeah. So honestly, I use the announcers in the crowd now as like track awareness. So I listen. So like if I know, say I get the whole shot and I know a certain rider's behind me versus another one, I kind of already know how these types of people race. So depending on who I hear behind me, or like obviously you can hear hubs or whatever, that'll be kind of the direction that I ride, or this way, that way. I mean, I can't always do it. There's been times where someone is way closer than I thought they were and I get past, and there's also been times where I'm trying my butt off, making a bunch of mistakes, and I'm 3 bikes ahead. So it doesn't always work, but I'm normally like into the turns, or like if there's a spot where you're jumping or kind of flowing and you can kind of pay attention, I tend to listen to them for cues. Yeah,
if the announcer's good, he could let you know everything that's going on the track. And because I listen for all that, and I've always had. But with pros, they always announce the whole race. With us, sometimes they might be taking a coffee break or something. Like they might not. They might announce us coming around the last turn or something.
They start halfway through the turn. Yeah, and I'll say it like at the Pan American Games, like I had a pretty decent lead, and I did not think I had that decent lead, and I almost blew it because I was trying so hard because I didn't know what was going on. And, you know, one of the basic rules of thumb is don't look back. You know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, that could be a big deciding factor in a race, right? Just knowing where you're at on the track, who's behind you. Like I said, what kind of racers behind you. If you know somebody is more likely or not to go stick it in there and go for an aggressive move, or if the person behind you is going to be okay with taking a second that lap, like those are all things that, you know, are variables when it's all said and done.
Right.
And me, I'm turning around. I don't care. Like, I'm old school. We used to do that. Like, we'll turn like our head for just a second, you know, but probably not supposed to, but I still do it.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it was, but I'm pretty sure it was a UCI race where somebody had a whistle and was using the whistle when they were in the gate, and one of the pros like flipped over the gate because he hit the whistle right before the gate dropped.
Yeah. That was
and I was just
Argentina.
Okay, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And I kind of wanted to be like, with that doing that, do you think that they should have just like restarted that race?
Yeah, so I think that they should have restarted it, but unfortunately, and it's really not anybody's fault, but the South Americans kind of just run what they brung. Like they're just
live and learn.
So I think depending on where that race is located and how many people actually went to them and were like, yo, what the heck? We need a rerun. Like I think in USA BMX, they probably would have reran that. But in some countries, it's kind of just like BMX race, it could happen. And that whistle wasn't even necessarily anybody's fault. It's just that where the track was in a sports complex where they were doing soccer. So the refs hit, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like there was somebody in the stands waiting for the whistle. It was like, okay, this BMX race is going on, and whether it's the sports complex's fault or not, they're running a freaking soccer tournament, you know, 2 parking lots away.
That's how every you described it, like somebody was on the side, like, you know, hiding behind a bush or something, you know, blowing the whistle.
In the video, you just hear the whistle.
Yeah, you just hear the whistle.
Blow, so, but yeah.
So I was just like, yo, because he just went straight over, boom. And I was like,
that's wild.
All right.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I raced at a track. There was a dirt bike track right next to it, and then a quarter mile. And sometimes they used to race like the drags with the jet engines. And those things were loud. So we'll have to sit there, like we could be on the gate, and they'll have to hold the gate for a few minutes, man, for the freaking jet engine cars to go down, and then we could race.
Yeah, and my old local track, Metro, has a big train next to it. So it would, when the train is coming, they would always stop the gate because you never know if the train guy's just trying to be nice and hits the horn.
Right.
And who knows? And honestly, that train came by a lot of nationals, and they would do it. And you're just like, but they don't know. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of uncontrollables out there.
That's funny.
So I was gonna say, I'm surprised Shannon didn't mention this one, but when you were going over your story of certain neighborhoods and stuff, rough areas or whatever, but one of the tracks that Shannon went to when he was a kid, there was like literally a shooting while he was at the track.
Oh, dang. Really?
Well, there was a bingo place, like a building within that same facility, you know, so you had the track on the side, bingo building, and they had like groups of guys that used to come up to gamble. It was a gambling spot also. So it was a bunch of people from like the city that took tour buses up to the spot. It was like a retreat, you know. Anyway, man, they had a freaking shootout, and my mom was just holding us down. We're ducking. I mean, it was just wild. I mean, people actually got shot, not from the track, but at the gambling spot.
Nearby. Yeah,
but I just remember seeing people running and hearing gunshots. I'm like, what is going on? So the article is still in the newspaper to this day. It's funny because I looked it up not too long ago, you know, about the shooting. It's just like, wow, bro. Because there are some tracks that are in some sketchy areas. Like, you know, usually they are for some reason.
Right, absolutely. And yeah, and I wouldn't say that my area was too at risk for that, but in Bakersfield, it's definitely not in the greatest area. And there are, you know, homeless, and I mean, it's disrespectful, but we call them tweakers, and people that are stealing, hopping hopping over the fences, getting into the snack bars. And you know, I've been to the track when the cars have gotten broken into and someone's wife got their purse stolen. And it's right by the train track, so there's people hopping on the trains, hopping off the trains. Bakersfield definitely has some sketchy areas, but I was kind of fortunate enough to not really ever get into anything like that. We've gone to other races growing up, like that have other kind of ran down areas in California that we would always have to be careful in. But fortunately, I've never been a part of anything too hectic. I think the city that I'm in, no, I've seen some things, but I was never with those type of people to get into anything too crazy. But like I said, Bakersfield is a pretty risky place to be.
Yeah.
So you mentioned tweakers. Have you ever raced any tweakers, man? Have you ever known any? Have you ever known any other riders to be like high while they were racing?
Not the like where I would have been old enough to know. Like I was pretty not street in tune until I was probably 17 or 18. I'm sure there was kids, 14, 15, 16 getting into stuff like that, but I was fortunate enough to grow up in a place or have a family that kept me very, very far away from that type of stuff. So I wouldn't have been able to,
That's cool.
I wouldn't have been able to be like, oh yeah, like that guy's high, or like, oh yeah, that guy's on something. But I've heard stories for sure.
I mean, I was talking more about now, like as far as like the pros.
Oh,
race against.
no, so we're not able to like we get like if you're on like the UCI,
You get drug tested,
get drug
right?
tested at any time. So most of us have to be pretty clean. So yeah, I don't really know anybody that. I mean, I've heard stories of some people being on some sleeping pills and stuff after their big caffeines, and obviously there's instances that happen. I know of one guy who got third at the national championships and then had to later give his medal up because he popped up for having THC in his system. But nobody that I know on a day-to-day basis that I'm around is in any of that, just because it's too risky.
Yeah. I'm sure it's not helping your BMX racing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not. I mean, I've honestly heard that some of that stuff does help, and maybe it would make you more calm. But yeah, it's too risky, and I'm not really into any of that stuff. So I'll have a beer here or there, but other than that, it's pretty clean over here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess my final question would be, when it's all said and done, what do you want to be remembered for in the sport?
It's a great question. I touched on it a little bit, but I just want to be remembered for the kid that never gave up and always gave it his best effort. I think when it's all said and done, the impact you have on people is more important than the races. I think there's a lot of people in the past and even other athletes that have a lot of cool accolades, but people can just be like, that guy was super great, but he wasn't really a great person. I never want to be remembered as someone who wasn't a great person. And yeah, just kind of want to be a role model to kids to just never give up. Because I think that growing up, I was never the guy, right? I was never nag one. I did win some races, but I was never up for the titles. I was never the person to get called on. I went to the, US development camps growing up, and I never was like that guy on the top 3 list of like, oh yeah, these are the guys that are coming up that's going to do it. I very much so was just the guy that never quit. And I think that there have been people that have, like I said, had a lot more talent, had a lot more skill, maybe had better opportunities, but they ended up quitting for whatever reason. And I think that, oftentimes people look at people maybe in my position and go, oh, like that guy just must be, a freak, or that guy must be just crazy, or he's lucky, or he's whatever that may be. And the truth of it is I just was the person that didn't give up. So I think that would be the biggest thing.
It's major right there.
Usually that's who wins, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Very cool, man. Thanks for coming by, man. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me on. I appreciated the time, and I'm always happy to share my story. So
all right. Thank you. Have a great you're on West Coast. Have a great afternoon, evening.
Yeah, you're good. Thank you guys. Have a good